The following program does not offer personal medical advice. Please consult your doctor before using any treatment or product we cover. Welcome to GoToHealth Radio with your host, Jonathan Marks. We provide a welcoming environment where experts educate you on important health topics, answer your questions, and provide information from which you can benefit in consultation with your doctor. And now, here is Jonathan Marks.
Hey, everybody. This is Jonathan. How are you? Good to see you again. Good to be with you again. Welcome to GoToHealth Radio. Again, the purpose of this show is to interview health experts from around the world who provide you with health news you can use. We want to elevate your life with evidence-based information from the health sciences. Now, I've been in health and medical communications for over 20 years, and I know the value that researchers and professionals can bring to your life with their expertise, services, and products. So let's get started with our first segment today. Its title is How to Build a Better Brain with Nutrition: Overcoming Stress, Anxiety, Depression, and ADHD with Nutrition and Nutrients. Our guest now is Julia Rucklidge, PhD. She's a professor of clinical psychology in the School of Psychology, Speech and Hearing at the University of Canterbury in Christchurch, New Zealand. She's also the director of the Mental Health and Nutrition Research Lab and co-author of the new book, The Better Brain. And you can find that book at thebetterbrainbook.com. I think you're going to want to get this book by the end of the interview. Over the last 20 years, Professor Rucklidge has become well known for her research investigating the interface between nutrition and mental health. She's published over 140 scientific papers, and her TEDx talk, The Surprisingly Dramatic Role of Nutrition in Mental Health, has been viewed over 1.7 million times. That's quite amazing. Having witnessed conventional treatments failing so many people, Julia is passionate about helping people find alternative treatments for their psychiatric symptoms. And through her focus on translating research into practice, she hopes to make nutritional interventions mainstream. Welcome to the program, Julia.
Oh, thank you, Jonathan, for having me. And it's so great to see you again.
Yes, you too. Julie and I work on another program together called New Brain Nutrition, and we met in Europe, and we've just created a fast friendship, and we're continuing to work together. So I want to start, Julia, with a couple of questions. First, in my introduction, what has been the failure of conventional treatments in helping people with their psychological or emotional problems? Where are we today?
Where are we? Well, if we look at the numbers in terms of the numbers of people in any one given year who are struggling with a mental health issue, the World Health Organization estimates it to be about 20%, and that can go up to 50% if you consider all of the people who are impacted, as well as thinking about it over a lifetime. So there's and that number seems to be going up. It's kind of always hard to sort of pinpoint it exactly, but if you look at data from 50, 60 years ago, it was much lower. And some people say it's because we're better at diagnosing, but there are also a lot of other things that might be explaining that rising number. Mm-hmm. So we have it's being called the mental health crisis around the world, certainly how it's described here in New Zealand, that many, many people are struggling with mental health issues. And then we have to say, okay, well, how well are we doing with our treatments? And the bottom line is that if the treatments that we have currently were working well, then you should see at the end of the day, over time, the numbers going down as people got treated and got better. Right. So the fact that the numbers continue to go up suggests that what we're currently offering people is not helping enough people. And that's things like, we've got medications that are probably the frontline form of treatment in North America, followed by psychotherapy, if you're lucky, and other types of support. Medications, the number of people on medications continues to rise internationally, and many people, probably your listeners, are on these types of medications like antidepressants, anxiolytics. 17% of people of adults are taking some kind of medication like that. So lots of people are on them, and the numbers are not going, we're simply not seeing the remission rates that we should expect, given how widely used they are. So it's not that to say that they're not helping some people. They are, they can save lives, right. But the data, when we look at the research studies, not enough people are getting well. And by well, I mean that they feel better, that they go back to work, they no longer have panic attacks. But the number of people I've spoken to over the years, since I've been doing this work on nutrition, who contact me, email me as a consequence of the TEDx talk, call me just saying, I'm on all these medication, my friend, my family members on all these medications, and I'm still struggling. And we've got to listen to that. We have got to listen to the public who are saying this isn't good enough.
Yeah, so you've done a tremendous amount of research in your lab, and this is clinical research with patients, and this is real data that you have about using nutrition to address mental issues. What got you interested in this whole area?
Yeah, sure. So I'm a trained clinical psychologist, not a nutritionist. So that's important for your listeners to know that. And I was trained in a very medical model where I was taught that nutrition was essentially irrelevant to brain health. And when I think about that now, and I think about that education that I received in the mid to late 1990s, I kind of think, how in the world could I accept that as being a reasonable way to think about brain health? Now that I understand why nutrition is so important to the brain, I really do look back on that in astonishment and also disappointment that educators were giving that message. And that's not just me. That was at the University of Calgary. But if you go to medical school, the training that doctors get in nutrition is tiny.
It's a couple of hours.
Exactly. It's a couple of hours. And it's usually focused on things like maybe eating disorders if you are in the mental health space, or it might be looking at the role of food in physical health, but not thinking about the role of food in, say, the treatment of depression or the treatment of anxiety or ADHD. So that's the sort of the current state. There's been research that's actually looked at this more recently to see, is this getting any better? And it isn't. So that you can certainly feel pretty comfortable that your doctor, your physician, isn't getting a lot of education in this area, and nor are other mental health professionals. So I'm not just focusing on physicians. So how does that a psychologist end up doing this? It just happened that when I was doing my PhD at the University of Calgary under the supervision of Professor Bonnie Kaplan, who's now retired, but she's the co-author of the book, that she was approached by families from Southern Alberta who were claiming that they could treat really serious psychiatric conditions like bipolar disorder, like depression, like psychosis, with nutrients. And in that case, it was nutrients in a sort of taking them in a liquid form. At that point, it's now in capsules and powder, but at that time it was in a liquid mineral type of concoction. And she just laughed and was like, there's no way that is possible, that you can treat these serious conditions that way, because she and I had been taught that the only way you can treat these serious conditions is with medications and or psychotherapy.
That's really quite a claim when you think about it.
It certainly is, exactly. And so she just wanted these people to go away. And but the one thing that I learned from Bonnie, and I really respect her for it, and that I try to instill in my own graduate students, is that unusual ideas are going to come our way as scientists. And yes, some of them are just crazy, or not crazy, but that they are there's no logic to them that we can dismiss them. But with this one, I think she'd been studying nutrition previously. And so what she decided to do was say, okay, fine, you guys are doing this, let's do a small clinical trial. So she ran a small clinical trial around the time when I finished my PhD and went on and did a postdoc. I moved to Toronto and was at the Hospital for Sick Children for a couple of years. And she did a clinical trial and showed that and she recruited people with bipolar disorder who were on medications. And over a 6-month period, these people not only showed their symptoms getting better over that 6-month period, but they were also able to get better with a lower dose of their medication. And if people out there are on medications, they'll recognize that that's probably a good thing, because medications, while they can help the symptoms, they come alongside with a side effect profile that can sometimes be quite difficult and intolerable. So to think that you could get benefit from the nutrient intervention alongside a lowering of your medications is overall viewed as a good thing from everybody. So she showed that, and it was published in a really, really well-respected journal. I think that was the Journal of Clinical Psychiatry. And then what was astonishing was that she then wanted to move on and do clinical trials, like a randomized controlled trial, which is where you compare the nutrients to placebo. And she ended up, her trials got shut down, and Health Canada got involved, and they heard about it, and they just said, no, people cannot be taking these nutrients. It's not a treatment. And there was many years there where they couldn't do the research. The supplements couldn't be sold in Canada, et cetera, et cetera. So it was really quite a dark time for trying to uncover whether or not there was anything to this. So that's so I heard about all of this, obviously, and Bonnie came to New Zealand so then I moved to New Zealand. That's where I am right now. And she came to New Zealand in 2003 and told a very large audiences about this very preliminary work. Other people at that point had also shown this. Charlie Popper, a psychiatrist at Harvard, had published also an this kind of open label case series where you give the nutrients to people and see how they go. A few other psychiatrists as well had started publishing on this. So she tried to get people in New Zealand interested. And I guess that's why I'm doing it, is that I learned from her is that you need to at least be open. You need to be a critic and conscience of society as a scientist.
Yes.
And you need to study things that might contravene the current way of thinking. And let's face it, at that point, I was no longer naive, thinking that these treatments cured everybody, like psychotherapy didn't cure everybody. I had my own data that was showing that even kids and adults with ADHD, even despite getting the best treatments, the conventional treatments, they were still impaired. And I just thought, you know what? This is my role as a scientist. We need to see if there's other things that we can offer people, because what we're doing right now isn't good enough.
So you and I know about this, but let's educate our audience a little bit. What is the connection between nutrition and diet and the brain and brain health? I mean, what possible connection is there?
I know. And again, going back to my absolutely terrible education in this, I wouldn't have been able to answer you at all if I, back in the 1990s, but obviously now I'm educated. I understand. I've read so much and so many papers and been to so many conferences that I feel really comfortable about telling you what does nutrition do to the brain. And it's not, it's once you engage with the science, you go, of course we should be ensuring that we think about a good foundation of nutrition for good mental health. So nutrition basically is that when we think about anything that's going on in your brain, so making neurotransmitters is hopefully something that will resonate with your audience. And a neurotransmitter is something like serotonin or dopamine. And many people are familiar with these names, I'm assuming. And that's partly because of the antidepressants that are called SSRIs, or selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. So what they're telling you is that they have an effect on your serotonin levels. So and so therefore, it's a clue that while the science is complicated in this space, what it's saying is that the SSRIs are having an effect on the serotonin levels, and somehow that seems to have an effect on emotions. So we are familiar with that idea that we need to make sure that we have some serotonin. But what many people don't know or don't realize is that to make serotonin, you need nutrients, and specifically you need micronutrients. And micronutrients, your listeners are going to be familiar with them. They're vitamins and minerals. And we always hear about how we need to eat our fruit and vegetables in order to get a good supply of vitamins and minerals. But what they often think of in the context of eating vitamins and minerals is that it's good for your heart, or it might be good for your bones.
Right.
But as children, we were not educated to think about it as being relevant to your brain, which is remarkable given that the brain, while it is only 2% of our body weight, so it's a really quite small organ, it consumes 20 to 40% of what comes in. So it's the most metabolically active organ in your brain. I like to call it a really hungry organ because when you're eating, you are mostly feeding your brain. So you eat your fruit and vegetables and you get these minerals and vitamins, and they are what are essential for making your serotonin or your dopamine or all of those neurotransmitters that are required for your brain to function.
Right.
So when you delve it down to that level of, what I'd call biochemistry, and recognize that they're needed for those biochemical reactions, you suddenly realize how important they are. And that's just one example of what they do. They do a whole host of other things. They are essential for the energy production. So if you're feeling tired, it might be because you're not feeding your mitochondria, which are in every single one of your cells, and they're essential for making the energy molecules. Maybe you're not feeding your mitochondria well because they need those micronutrients. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of insight. And in the book, we go into so much detail, but in a way that, it's written for the public, and it's, in a way that hopefully is engaging and interesting for the reader, and going, oh, wow, now I know why I need to eat. It's for my brain.
Good. Julia, this is a wonderful overview. So I just want to repeat, 40% of what you eat goes to brain function.
Yes.
That's incredible. I will
know.
remember that the next time I sit down for a meal. 40%, folks, of what you eat goes to brain function. I want you to remember that. We're going to take a break shortly, but and we're going to talk more about what's in your book, and it's called...
So the book is called The Better Brain.
You want to check this out at thebetterbrainbook.com. And we will be back with Julia after these messages to talk more about what's in the book and what you can do to feed your brain in a better way. Stick with us.
Thank you for tuning in this week to Go to Health Radio. Be sure to join Jonathan Marks and another health expert next Wednesday at 3 p.m. Eastern Time and 12 noon Pacific Time on the Voice America Variety Channel. You can also catch the program on your favorite podcast platform. Until our next show, be sure to visit us on the web at GoToHealthMedia.com and elevate your life.